This is it. We're ready to create our service profile template. By the end of this nugget, we're going to be able to start the process of creating a service profile template, as well as complete the network configuration portion based on the plan that we did a couple nuggets ago. Well, with that, let's get started. We want to be on the Servers tab, and again, we could just create a service profile by right-clicking and say, let's create a service profile, but that's good for one time, and for the most part, we want to create a service profile template and create the service profiles from there. So we'll right-click on Service Profile Templates and say Create a Service Profile Template. Now we give it a name. In our case, we'll call it ESXi since it's going to be a VMware server, and we'll just call it -demo, and we'll make it an initial template. Now as a quick review with the templates, because we've covered this in other UCS skills but haven't in this one, an updating template, if it's updating, will maintain its connection to the service profile. So this is the service profile template, and we create a service profile. Such as if I make a change here in the service profile template, that change will actually be propagated down. So maybe I get rid of a VNIC on the template. Well, that's going to get rid of the VNIC on the service profile as well. Long story short is updating templates are convenient, but they're also risky. And so we're going to go with an initial template on this example. And the UUID assignment is one of the first things that we have to select. We use the drop-down, and as covered in the last nugget, our UUIDs are in the default pool. So select the default pool and click Next. Now storage provisioning, this is where we would select policies for larger servers like the S-Series servers. In our case, since it's a blade, we're going to skip over to the local disk configuration policy and use the drop-down to specify that SD boot no disk. That means, again, that we have no local storage, no hard drives installed into this server, but we are going to enable Flex Flash, which would be the SD cards. So I click Next, and this brings us to the networking portion of this configuration. Now UCS is great, and they give us this simple configuration that will create 2 VNICs for us, but we need to go beyond that. So we're going to click Expert. In almost every case, we're going to click Expert, and then we're going to start adding our VNICs. So the first VNIC we want to add is for management, and so we'll say management 0, and because this is going to be on Fabric A, we've got Fabric A selected down here, we'll pick the MAC address A pool from the list. Now we could enable failover, but the only place we're going to enable failover in our example is going to be with vMotion, because we'll have a redundant management 1 connection on Fabric B. So from there we can come down and select the management VLAN, and we want to make this native because we're not going to tag that traffic down to the hypervisor. From there, the MTU we have to look at, but we're not going to change that for the management. 1500 is fine. Adapter policy, Cisco comes with a default VMware policy that we want to pick with NICs that connect to a VMware host. QoS policy will be best effort for management. Network control policy, CDP on. We're going to enable CDP on the management interfaces. These settings are what we're doing in this lab environment, but when creating a service profile template for a specific environment, we want to make sure that all of these are according to the policies that we have in place for our organization. With that, we can say OK, and we've created our first VNIC. Now we're going to create management 1. This will go a little bit faster because this is the same configuration. It will just be Fabric B. So we're going to pick MAC B, Fabric B, no failover, still pick the management VLAN, enable that as native, 1500 we'll leave alone, adapter policy, QoS policy, network control policy are all what we just did, and we'll say OK. So that's management. Now we need to still create data VNICs, vMotion VNICs, and storage VNICs. So let's go in that order. Let's take a look at the data VNICs. So say add, and typically like to call these Ethernet, so ETH0 would be a good name for the data. We could also call it data 0 or something else that makes sense. MAC address, because it's Fabric A, will be MAC A. Fabric A, again, no failover because we don't need it for virtual machines. VMware handles that for us. And we can scroll down. For this, we want to enable 2 different VLANs, Network 5 and Servers 4. Now this is a great example as to why it's good practice to have the VLAN number in the name, because we can see here that Pixie Boot, we have no idea if that's VLAN 10, 20, 100. I have no idea what VLAN ID that is. UCS doesn't provide that within this particular screen. So saying Network 5, hey, we know that's VLAN 5. Servers 4, we know that's VLAN 4. That allows us to know which VLANs we're adding to a particular VNIC. We're not going to make either of those native because the ESXi host will tag that traffic coming up to UCS, so that's good. MTU we want to leave the same because servers don't need jumbo frames natively. And then adapter policy, VMware, QoS policy would again be best effort, network control policy, CDP on, and we'll say OK. For now, let's skip over creating Ethernet 1 and let's go create our vMotion VNIC. So we'll add, say, vMotion 0. This will be on fabric A. And again, we're going to enable failover on this vMotion VNIC because we want to do the traffic engineering that we talked about in a previous nugget. Now we're going to add VLAN 5 to the vMotion, and we will make this the native VLAN so we don't have to tag that traffic. vMotion does benefit from jumbo frames, so we'll set this to 9,000 and make sure that our QoS policy, in our case silver, is set to 9,000. It even says that, right? Make sure the MTU matches what's in the QoS system class. So from adapter policy, again, we'll pick VMware. Network control policy, we can enable CDP, and we'll say OK. Next, we'll create our iSCSI VNIC. So in our case, we'll call this storage 0. MAC address comes from fabric A. And we won't enable failover because the iSCSI multipathing drivers in VMware will handle failover for us. We'll add the iSCSI VLAN. We'll make that native. And from here, MTU we'll set to 9,000 because iSCSI benefits from jumbo frames. Again, we have to pick a QoS policy that has jumbo frames enabled. In our case, we'll select QoS Gold, which does have jumbo frames enabled. Using the adapter policy again, setting it to VMware, network control policy to CDP on, and there we go. We've created all of the VNICs in Fabric A with the exception of Management 1. So I'm going to go create Ethernet 1, vMotion 1, and Storage 1, and through the magic of video, we'll just be done like that. And there we go. All of the VNICs are created, and the only thing to keep in mind is that with vMotion 1, I still added that to Fabric A with failover to Fabric B, again, matching the traffic engineering scenario that we described previously. Well, we're not done yet, but it's a good time to pause and review what we've done up until now. So first of all, we had to decide between an updating and initial template, and from there, we assigned the UID pool and the local disk policy. Now, the networking section was fairly large. We had to create all of the VNICs that we had laid out in our previously crafted plan. Up next is the rest of the service profile template creation. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.